Voicemail was 32 seconds long, and my husband's name was on the screen, but the voice wasn't his. It was a woman's. She said, "Hey, just letting you know the wire cleared. Same account as last time. Talk soon." I stood in our kitchen in Columbus, Ohio, holding my phone with both hands, and I played it again. And again. The coffee maker beeped behind me. The school bus hadn't come yet. My daughter was upstairs looking for her left shoe. I set the phone face down on the counter. I didn't say anything to my husband that morning. He kissed me on the cheek, said he had an early call, grabbed his travel mug, and was gone by 7:15. Just like every Tuesday. I drove my daughter to school anyway. I smiled at the crossing guard. I said, "Have a great day, baby," when she climbed out of the car, and I waited until I couldn't see her backpack anymore before I let myself breathe. Then I sat in the school parking lot for 40 minutes and did not move. My husband's name is Lyndon. We've been married 9 years. He works in commercial real estate finance, or that's what I understood it to be. Conference calls, site visits, quarterly closings, a lot of travel. A lot of the deal is almost done. I'm a speech-language pathologist with a private practice I built from scratch starting when our daughter was 2. We have a good life. A house we bought together in Clintonville, a Labrador named Biscuit, a daughter who reads above grade level and makes friends easily and still lets me braid her hair on Sundays. I thought we were happy. Or maybe I thought we were stable, and I told myself that was the same thing. I need to back up a little. 3 months before that voicemail, I noticed our joint savings account balance had dropped. Not dramatically, not enough that I'd panic, but enough that something felt off. We kept a joint account for household expenses and a shared savings buffer. Lyndon managed most of the transfers because I'd asked him to early in our marriage when my practice was new and unpredictable. I had trusted him completely. I asked him about it one night after dinner. He said a client deal had fallen through and he'd had to cover some brokerage costs temporarily, that it would be replenished within 60 days. He showed me a document on his laptop. It looked official. I believed him. 60 days passed. The balance didn't go back up. I told myself I was paranoid. I told myself I was tired. I told myself that married people go through financial rough patches and that I should trust my husband. But I quietly opened my own individual savings account at a different bank and started moving a portion of my monthly income there. I didn't even fully understand why I did it. Some part of me that wasn't ready to say anything out loud was already trying to protect me. The voicemail changed everything. Lyndon had accidentally called me from his work phone, the same number he always used, but the voicemail was clearly not for me. The woman had a familiar cadence, comfortable, casual, the way you sound when you're calling someone you talk to every day. That night I went through our joint account statements for the past 14 months, 47 transfers, most between $2,000 and $4,000, a few larger ones, $9,000, $11,000, all going to an account I didn't recognize. All on days when Lyndon was supposedly traveling for work. Total, just under $220,000. I sat at the kitchen table until 2 in the morning. Biscuit slept at my feet. The house made its night sounds. And I made a decision. I was not going to confront him. Not yet. Not until I knew exactly what I was dealing with. A friend of mine from graduate school, a woman who handled her own divorce 5 years ago, had used a private investigator. She'd mentioned it once, almost in passing, the way you mention something you wish you hadn't needed. I texted her that night. She called me back within 10 minutes. His name was Wade. She said he was thorough, discreet, and expensive. I said that was fine. I met Wade at a coffee shop near my office. He was in his late 50s, wore a plain gray jacket, and ordered a black coffee with no ceremony. He listened to everything I said without writing anything down. Then he asked me 3 questions: Lyndon's work schedule, the name of his company, and whether I had any reason to believe this involved a third party or a financial scheme or both. I said I didn't know. I said probably both. Wade told me it would take 4 to 6 weeks. He would document what he found and present me with the full report. He did not offer opinions or predictions. I appreciated that more than I can explain. I paid his retainer from my new individual account. The 4 weeks that followed were the strangest of my life. I made lunches. I saw patients. I braided my daughter's hair. I sat across from my husband at dinner 3-4 nights a week, And I watched his face, and I tried to understand how I could have been looking at this person for 9 years and still not see whatever was underneath. He was good at it. I'll give him that. He was warm. He asked about my patients in the vague way you do when you care but not enough to remember specifics. He helped with homework. He called me from his trips and said, "I miss you guys," in a voice that sounded completely real. I used to think deception required a certain coldness. I don't believe that anymore. Wade called me on a Wednesday afternoon. He said he had everything and asked if I could come by that evening. I sat in his office, a plain room above a tax preparation business, and he put a folder on the desk between us. He walked me through it methodically, page by page. The woman's name was on the documents, a joint LLC registered in Delaware, filed 7 months ago, her name in Lyndon's. The company's listed purpose was real estate consulting. The transfers from our joint account were capitalization funds for the LLC, but the LLC hadn't done any consulting work. What it had done was purchase a condominium in Scottsdale, Arizona, in both their names. There were photographs. Lyndon at a restaurant in Scottsdale. Lyndon at what appeared to be a community pool. Lyndon holding a dog I didn't recognize, a small white one, standing in front of a unit in a complex I had never heard of, and the woman was in several of them. She was younger than me, maybe 30. She had the kind of easy, unguarded smile that you only have when you feel completely safe with someone. I looked at the photographs for a long time. Wade sat across from me quietly. He was good at that too. I asked if the condo purchase was complete or if there was still a mortgage. He said complete, paid in full, $216,000, plus closing costs. I closed the folder. I sat in my car in the parking lot outside his office and called my mother. She answered on the second ring. I said, "Mom, I need to tell you something and I need you to listen without reacting until I'm finished." She said, "Okay." And I told her all of it. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Okay, first things first, do you have a lawyer?" I did not. She said, "I'm going to call Aunt Rosemary's daughter. She's a family law attorney in Cincinnati. I'll get you a name." My mother is the most practically loving person I've ever known. She didn't cry. She didn't call Lyndon names. She just started solving the problem because she knew that's what I needed. I would fall apart later. Right now I needed a plan. The attorney's name was Bryn. She had been practicing family law for 16 years and had the kind of quiet, organized competence that makes you feel like things might actually be okay. I met with her 2 days later without telling Lyndon anything. Bryn reviewed everything Wade had given me. She was methodical. She took notes in a small leather notebook with a mechanical pencil. When she finished, she looked up and said, "The transfers from the joint account constitute dissipation of marital assets. The LLC and the condo purchase using marital funds without your knowledge or consent is highly actionable. In Ohio, this matters significantly in equitable distribution." She explained what that meant. The court could factor the amount he diverted when dividing our marital estate. Essentially, what he'd stolen from us could be counted against his share. She also said I needed to stop the bleeding immediately. She helped me understand exactly what I could legally do, change my direct deposit, open individual accounts, document everything in our joint accounts. She was careful to tell me what I should not do, nothing that could be construed as hiding assets on my end. "We want to be the clean party," she said. "That matters." I told her about the voicemail. She asked me to preserve it exactly as it was. She explained that in Ohio, voicemail recordings left on your own phone are generally admissible because there is no reasonable expectation of privacy in a message you leave for someone else. I asked her how long this would take. She said probably 8 to 14 months for a full resolution, depending on how contested it became. She said that men who had done what Lyndon had done often became very aggressive once the divorce was filed because they knew what they stood to lose. She told me to be ready for that. I drove home. My daughter was at an after-school program until 5:30. I had 2 hours. I walked through every room in our house and I took photographs. The furniture, the appliances, the artwork, the items that had been gifts or heirlooms or purchases I'd made before our marriage. I sent them all to my personal email. Then I called my sister, who lived 40 minutes away, and I asked her to come over that evening. She arrived with wine she didn't open, an expression that told me my mother had already called her. We sat at the kitchen table, and I showed her everything. She looked at the photographs of Lyndon and the woman in Scottsdale. She looked at the account statements. She looked at the LLC filing. Then she looked at me and said, "When are you filing?" I said, "Next week. Bryn is preparing the petition." She nodded. She reached across the table and held my hand for a moment. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. What I hadn't told anyone yet, what I hadn't even fully let myself think about, was my daughter. She was 8 years old. She adored her father. She called him Dad in the full-throated, unself-conscious way that 8-year-olds do, without any awareness that the word carries weight. She saved drawings for him when he traveled. She had a chart on her bedroom wall counting down to his next return home. I didn't know how to tell her. I didn't know what to say or when, or in what words. I knew that whatever I said, I could not speak badly of him to her. Not because I felt generous toward him. I didn't, not even close. But because she would need her relationship with her father to be her own, separate from my grief and my rage. I was not going to make her carry that. So I called a child therapist I trusted professionally and asked for a referral. She gave me 3 names. I chose one and made an appointment for the following week, framing it to my daughter as a person who is really good at helping kids talk about big feelings, and I thought it might be fun to try. She shrugged and said okay. She was reading a book about volcanoes and was more interested in whether a specific lava type would theoretically reach our neighborhood. I said no. She looked skeptical but returned to the book. The night before I was served, before Lyndon was served, I had one last dinner with him. I made pasta. He brought home dessert from a bakery downtown, little chocolate things in a white paper bag, and he put them on the counter like everything was fine. Like it was just another Tuesday. He talked about a deal he was working on. He asked about my caseload. He said he thought we should take a family trip that summer, maybe somewhere with a beach. I said that sounded nice. I watched him eat, and I thought about the woman's voice on the voicemail. Easy and comfortable. Same account as last time. And I thought about $220,000. I thought about the chart on my daughter's bedroom wall with the little star stickers. I said goodnight. I went upstairs. The next morning, a process server came to Lyndon's office. I know because Bryn texted me at 11:04 a.m., confirmed served. Lyndon called me 17 minutes later. I let it go to voicemail. What followed was, as Bryn predicted, not quiet. Lyndon's initial response, delivered through his attorney, was that the LLC was a legitimate business venture, that I had been aware of it, and that the funds transferred were part of a mutually agreed-upon investment strategy. I had not been aware of it. There was no agreement, and I had documentation, bank records, the voicemail, Wade's report, the deed on the Scottsdale condo, that made his claim extremely difficult to sustain. His attorney sent a series of letters. Lyndon called from numbers I didn't recognize. He showed up at the house once, on a Saturday morning when my daughter was at a birthday party. He sat in the driveway for 20 minutes. Then he left. I texted Bryn. She said to document it and keep going. Through those months, I focused on what I could control, my practice, my daughter, the process. I restructured my finances. I talked to a financial planner, a woman named Sasha who specialized in divorce transitions, and she helped me understand exactly where I stood and what a fair settlement would look like. She was clear-eyed and specific, and she used numbers the way Bryn used legal precedent, as tools, not weapons. My daughter started seeing the therapist. She was quiet about what they talked about, which the therapist said was normal and healthy, but she started making slightly different drawings, ones that included me more prominently, that had her and me and Biscuit in scenes without her father. She never said anything directly about it. Kids process things in the order they're ready to, and she was doing exactly that. We told her together, Lyndon and I, at Bryn's recommendation, with the therapist's guidance, on a Sunday afternoon. We sat at the kitchen table. We used plain language. We said that her dad and I had decided we couldn't be married anymore, that this was something between us as adults, that it was not about her, and that we both loved her completely, and that would never change. She was quiet for a long time. Then she asked if she could still have her room at both houses. I said yes. Lyndon said yes. She nodded. She asked if Biscuit could come to both places too. We said yes. She seemed to accept this the way children accept things they don't have full language for yet, not because they understand, but because they trust that the people they love are telling them what they need to know. I watched her face and I thought, I will spend the rest of my life making sure she can always trust that. The financial settlement took 11 months. The LLC was dissolved. The Scottsdale condo, purchased with marital funds, was ordered to be sold, with the proceeds credited to the marital estate. The court factored the diverted funds into equitable distribution, which meant Lyndon's share of our marital assets was reduced accordingly. I kept the house in Clintonville after buying out his reduced share. I kept my practice, which had been valued as a separate asset I'd built before the marriage. The final numbers were a fair accounting, not a windfall, not a punishment. Just what was actually ours, divided honestly, except that his dishonesty was part of the accounting now. His attorney tried to negotiate a reduction 3 times. Bryn declined each one. She was calm about it in a way that I found deeply satisfying. On the day the divorce was finalized, I sat in Bryn's office and signed the last of the documents. She handed me a pen with a small, business-like smile. We didn't make a big deal of it. It wasn't a celebration. It was just the end of a long process that had been necessary and was now complete. I drove home. I picked up my daughter from school. She had made something in art class, a small clay dog, painted brown with a yellow collar. She said it was supposed to be Biscuit, but the ears came out weird. I said the ears were perfect. She put it on the kitchen windowsill when we got home. It's still there. That was 14 months ago. I'm not going to tell you that I'm completely fine, because that would be the kind of thing people say when they want to seem stronger than they are. There are mornings when I wake up, and the first thing I feel is a grief I can't fully name. Not for him exactly, but for the version of my life I thought I was living. For the 9 years of a story I was inside without knowing I'd been handed the wrong script. But I know things now that I didn't know before. I know that I built my practice on my own, and that it is mine. I know that I am capable of absolute stillness in a moment of crisis, which is something I never knew about myself. I know that my sister will come over on short notice and sit at a kitchen table and hold my hand and not say anything, and that this is one of the most important things a person can do for you. I know that my daughter is resilient in the specific, unhurried way that children are resilient when the adults around them tell the truth and keep their promises. I know that Bryn was right. Being the clean party matters. Not for the outcome, though, it helped with that. But because when you're standing in the middle of something this painful, the only version of yourself you can fully trust is the one who didn't lie. I'm that version. I'm still her. That turns out to be enough. The clay dog my daughter made is still on the kitchen windowsill. The ears are lopsided, and one leg is shorter than the others, and I think it's the most honest thing in this house. Imperfect, handmade, entirely hers. I think about cause and effect a lot now. Not in a dramatic way, not in the way people talk about karma like it's a cosmic scoreboard. I mean something quieter than that. I mean the simple fact that what we do and what we don't do, what we allow, what we look away from, tends to accumulate. Linda didn't make one bad decision in a single reckless moment. He made 47 transfers. He filed an LLC. He bought a condo. He came home and made pasta and talked about beach vacations. Every one of those choices was its own small construction, built on top of the last. And eventually, the structure was too large to hide. That's not luck. That's not fate. That's just how things work. What I've learned about integrity, and I use that word because I couldn't have defined it before this happened, not really, is that it isn't about grand gestures. It showed up for me as the decision not to drain the joint account when I could have. It showed up as Brennan's voice saying, "We want to be the clean party," and me understanding immediately that she was right. You don't fight dishonesty by becoming dishonest. You fight it by being so clearly, documentably the opposite that there's no room for confusion. I didn't always feel strong during those 11 months. There were mornings when I sat in my car in the driveway for 10 minutes before I could make myself go inside. But I've stopped confusing that kind of difficulty with weakness. Staying clear-headed when everything in you wants to react, When you want to scream or retaliate or fall apart, that is its own kind of strength. Wade's report. Bryn's notebook. The photographs I took of every room. The account I opened quietly before I said a word. None of that was easy. All of it required me to think when I wanted to feel, and to act when I wanted to collapse. And my daughter. I made her a promise, without ever saying the words out loud, that I would not hand her my bitterness to carry, that whatever she built with her father would be hers to build or not build on her own terms. Keeping that promise, especially in the months when I was most angry, took more out of me than anything else. But I know with the specific certainty of having done something hard and done it right, that she will be okay. Not because the world is fair, but because she has seen what it looks like when someone refuses to be less than who they are, even when it costs something. That turns out to be the only inheritance that actually holds its value.